Good morning, students. Sorry I wasn't able to be with you guys today. Unfortunately, I have training today. Anyways, let's go over solving systems of equations by substitution. All right, so we know that systems of equations are, well, we can solve systems of equations graphically, and it's the point xy where the two lines intersect. But today's lesson is how to solve systems of equations algebraically, right? We want to try to use math to solve this without uh, having to graph these lines all the time. So algebraically, the point xy that makes both equations true. All right, so in order to solve this, step one, we go ahead and, well, we solve one equation for x or y. Remember, when solving, that just means to get x or y by itself. So that's what it means when it says to solve. All right, step number two, it says blank that variable into the other equation and solve. So we go ahead and, well, this is called substitution. So this technique involves us substituting. So substitute that variable into the other equation and solve. And then next, step three, we go ahead and plug the x or y value back into any equation and solve for the remaining variable. So you guys will see what I'm talking about when I discuss this later. But any equation, let's try to let's make a note here. I want us to choose the easiest one. Choose the easier one. And I put easier in quotation marks because, well, it's up to you guys what you feel like is the easier one, but hopefully you guys will see what I mean when I'm going over these examples. All right, let's get started. Question number one, 4x plus 5y is equal to 11. All right, so first, and we also have y is equal to 3x minus 13. Step number one, it says solve one equation for x or y. What's nice about this is that, well, we already have one equation solved for y, right? This is y by itself, so yeah, it's already solved. Next, we can skip to step two. Step two says substitute. We want to go ahead and substitute that variable into the other equation and solve. All right, so this lesson is on solving equations by substitution. So ironically, I do have a substitute teacher. And yeah, that substitute teacher is replacing me, right? So we can go ahead and replace this y value in this equation with this expression. So if that doesn't make sense, let me just try to explain it a little bit better. So I'm going to basically replace, I know that y is equal to 3x minus 13. So wherever I see a y in this expression, this top expression, I'm going to replace it with 3x minus 13. So let's go ahead and do that. So I still have this 4x, right? Bring down this 4x. 4x plus 5. And now instead of a y, I'm going to replace that with 3x minus 13, right? I'm going to substitute that expression into that variable. And then that's going to be equal to 11. And now hopefully you guys can see why that makes this equation a lot easier, right? Before we had a system of equations. Well, now we just have an equation in one variable, right? We started off with two variables. Now we just have one variable. Now that makes it easier for us to solve, right? So, I mean, ideally we should be able to solve these by now. Let's see, we have parentheses. We know that we're going to go ahead and distribute the 5 to get rid of the parentheses. All right, so 5 times 3x, that gives us 15x. 5 times negative 13, that gives us negative 65, I think, yeah. And then we bring down the 4x. All right, and then that's going to be equal to 11. Now we can combine like terms. Remember, always combine like terms first. So we get 19x minus 65 is equal to 11. Then we go ahead and add 65 to both sides. Should have wrote a little bit smaller for this. We get 19x is equal to, right, these 65s cancel out. We're just left at 19x is equal to, what would that be, 76. And dividing both sides by 19, we get x is equal to, let's see, 76 divided by 19, x is equal to 4. All right, so we have x is equal to 4. But remember, in a system of equations, right, usually we'd be done with this problem by now, but a system of equations, we need an x and a y variable, right? We want to solve for both the x and the y. So how do we do that? Well, we take a look at step number 3. We can plug the x or y value. Clearly, we solved for x, so we're going to plug the x value back in into any equation, right? Any equation, and solve for the remaining variable. So you guys remember when I said choose the easier one? So it's up to you guys, whatever you feel like is the easier one. I feel like this one would be the easier one though, right? So why do I feel like that would be the easier one? Well, if we just plug in x, we don't have to do any other math, so to say, right? If we plug in x in here, then we'd have to do some extra steps to solve for y from here. So just solving for y, we have y already solved so that we can plug in that 4 and then solve. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So y is equal to 3. But instead of an x, I'm going to replace that with my 4, right? I'm going to substitute that back into there. So 3 times 4 minus 13. And then, I don't know. I really feel like sometimes color coding things helps. So we have x is equal to 4. And all I did was just replace that 4 in my equation. Y is equal to 3x minus 13. Instead of x, I just have a 4 there. All right, so lastly, we go ahead and simplify this. This is y is equal to, well, 3 times 4 is 12 minus 13. So y is equal to negative 1. All right, so we solved for an x, we solved for a y. And now our final answer, remember our final answer always in coordinate form, right? So coordinate form is always going to be x comma y. So our final answer is just, x, which is 4, comma, negative 1. 4, comma, negative 1, our final answer. 4, comma, negative 1. Final answer. All right, so of course, anytime you learn mathematics, sometimes it's a little bit tougher to see that just by going over one problem. So let's go over another problem. Question number 2, we have x is equal to y minus 9, and then 3x plus 8y is equal to negative 5. So let's go ahead and look at step number 1. It says solve one equation for x or y. We don't have to do that, right? We already have x by itself over here. So yeah, x is already solved for. So now, just like we did with step number 1, we are going to go ahead and substitute this x, or this y minus 9, right? We're substituting this expression into this expression wherever we see an x, right? We know that x is equal to that, so we're just going to go ahead and replace that. All right, very, very similar to what we did with problem number 1. All right, so we have 3 multiplied by, right, instead of an x, we're going to replace that with y minus 9. Y minus 9. Once again, please make sure you guys are using parentheses, right? Just like up here, I put it in parentheses. I put it down here in parentheses because I know I have to distribute that 3 to each of these. All right, so plus 8y is equal to negative 5. All right, now, once again, we have an equation just in one variable, right? That makes it way easier for us to solve. We distribute this 3. We have 3y, and we distribute this to the negative 9. That gives us minus 27 plus 8y. I'm just bringing everything else down, is equal to negative 5. All right, combining like terms, on the left-hand side, we have 11y minus 27 is equal to negative 5. Yikes, once again, I should have written a little bit smaller. Add 27 to both sides. We get 11y add 27, add 27. We get 11y is equal to 22. And then dividing both sides by 11, we get y is equal to positive 2. All right, so just as before, we solved for one variable. Now our goal is to solve for the other variable, right? So on that question number 1, we solved for x. Now we want to solve for y. This one, we solved for y. Now we need to solve for x. So looking at step 3, we can plug the x or y value back into any equation. Once again, I really feel like this is the easier equation to choose, but it's up to you guys. If you feel like the other one would be easier, it's a lot more steps, but if you feel like it's easier, go ahead and use that. But I think this one is easier, so I'm going to use this equation. So originally, we started off with x is equal to y minus 9, right? Let me just, for those of us that are still not seeing this, let me just write this out. X is equal to y minus 9, right? So right now, let me just highlight this. I have y is equal to 2. But instead of this y right here, I'm going to replace that with a 2. Right? So I'm just going to replace that with a 2. I have x is equal to 2 minus 9. Once again, that 2 is coming from up there. I know that I already solved for y. I already solved for that number, right? And then we get x is equal to, here's my lead keeps breaking. X is equal to negative 7. Yeah, so I solved for my x, I solved for my y. Now my final answer is just putting that into coordinate form. X is equal to negative 7. There you go. Yeah, putting it into coordinate form, right? X comma y. So negative 7, comma 2. And once again, that negative 7 is what I got from solving for x, right? X comma y, always our final answer. All right, so please go ahead and try to do number 3 by your guys' selves. And then after you do that, try to watch the video afterwards. All right, ideally you should have paused the video and tried to do this by yourself. So let's go ahead and try to review this. So right now we have actually both x and y solved, right? So we could go either way. I'm just going to go ahead and substitute this y minus 3 right into this x in the second equation. Either way you do this, though, you should get the same answer. So let's go ahead and do this. So we have, let's see, y, right? We're going to use this equation. Y is equal to 2. And instead of writing this x, I'm going to replace that with, well, we know it's equal to y minus 3, right? We're going to substitute that into that equation, right? And then we still have that plus 4. We still have 2x plus 4, 2 times, well, yeah, this is x plus 4. All right, now, well, this is a little bit trickier because, well, we have y's on both sides of this equation, but we should already know how to solve this, right? This is just our chapter 3 stuff. Y is equal to 2y, distributing the 2, and then 2 times negative 3 is minus 6, plus 4. Now, before we do anything else, let's remember to combine like terms. So let's see, we have y is equal to 2y. Negative 6 plus 4, that gives me minus 2. Next, I want to get my y's on one side of the equation. So this side already has a number, so let's go ahead and subtract 2y from both sides. Minus 2y minus 2y. These y's cancel out. On the left-hand side, 1y minus 2y, that's negative y is equal to negative 2. Lastly, dividing both sides by negative 1, I get y is equal to positive 2. All right, so once again, we solved for one of these variables, right? Y is equal to positive 2. Now let's go ahead and replace it in one of these equations. I'm going to use this equation, right? If I replace y, it's 2 minus 3, that'll just be -1. I feel like this is this is the easier equation to use. But for those of us that aren't seeing that, let's just go ahead and rewrite this out. X is equal to y minus 3. All right, so instead of a y, I'm going to replace that with 2, right? X is equal to 2 minus 3. Once again, how did I know to replace that with 2? Well, I know that my y was equal to 2. I knew my y was equal to 2, so I replaced it in there. And then I get x is equal to -1. Right, so I solved for my x, I solved for my y. Now I just go ahead and put it into coordinate form. That would be coordinate form x comma y, right? So our final answer, -1 comma 2. -1 is my x value that I solved for. 2 is my y value that I solved for. So that would be my final answer. All right, question number 4. We have x plus y is equal to 5, 2x plus 3y is equal to 12. The only thing different about this is that we don't have an x or a y solved for, right? So step 1, remember, step 1 is to solve for an x or a y. And once again, you can choose the easier equation to use. I feel like this would be the easier equation because this is just one step, right? You can choose any variable to choose for. I'm just going to choose x to solve for. It doesn't matter which variable you choose. You'll still get the same answer. And solving for x here, it's just the same amount of steps, right? We would just subtract y from both sides. But anyways, let's go ahead and rewrite that out. X plus y is equal to 5. And I want to go ahead and solve for x, right? So I subtract y from both sides. So my x is equal to -y plus 5. And now I can go ahead and substitute, right? I know that x is equal to y or -y plus 5. So I'm going to go ahead and substitute it into this x, right? That x I'm going to replace with -y plus 5. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. 2 times, right? 2 times x, but instead of x, I'm going to write -y plus 5 plus 3y, and that's equal to 12. All right, so now distributing this to, same thing now, same process now. Now we're going to try to solve for y. This is a little bit more steps involved, but let's go ahead and try to do this. 2 times -y is -2y. 2 times 5 is 10. And then we bring down the plus 3y, and that's going to be equal to 12. All right, now combining like terms, we get y plus 10 is equal to 12. And then, sorry, I should have wrote smaller. Let me just bring this up here. Y plus 10 is equal to 12. And then subtracting 10 from both sides, we get y is equal to 2. All right, so we're halfway done, right? Now we take a look at step 3. Step 3 says to plug our variable back into any equation. I really feel like this is the easier equation to use, so I'm going to use that equation, right? X plus y is equal to 5. But instead of this y, I already solved for y is equal to 2. So instead of that y, I'm going to replace it with 2. X plus 2, right? X plus 2. X plus 2 is equal to 5. All right. I mean, let's just use mental math here, right? What number plus 2 is equal to 5? What number is that? Well, that's just 3, right? X is equal to 3. Yeah, so same process. We found our y value, then we plugged it back in and solved for our x. So now we have our coordinate of x comma y. Our final answer is 3 comma 2. Right, this 3 is that x that we solved for just now. And the y is equal to 2 is that first variable that we solved for. All right, so please at this time, go ahead and pause the video and try to do number 5 by your guys' selves, please. All right, so ideally you should have paused the video and tried to do number 5 by yourselves. Let's look at this top equation. The reason why I say the top is because that's the one I'm going to want to use to solve for my y, right? I have to solve for y. You can solve for x, but that'll just be a little bit more math and it'll be more fractions, right? I don't like working with fractions. So if I solve for y, it's just one step, right? And that one step, well, let's just rewrite this out. 4x plus y is equal to 24. Now, if I just subtract 4x from both sides, I have my y solved for. Minus 4x minus 4x. We get y is equal to negative 4x plus 24. All right, so now we already used this top equation, so now we have to substitute this y into this second equation. So let's see. I'm going to substitute negative 4x plus 24. Right, substitution, that's the name of this lesson. I'm going to substitute that y into that variable y, right? Wherever I see a y, I'm going to replace it with negative 4x plus 24. Okay, so let's try to do this. We have 2x minus 3 times negative 4x plus 24. All right, and then that's still equal to negative 2. Now let's try to do this. We want to get rid of parentheses, so we distribute this negative 3, right? Be careful about distributing. So 2x. Let's see, negative 3 times negative 4x, that's positive 12x or plus 12x. Negative 3 times 24, that gives me negative 72, pretty sure. Yeah, minus 72, and that's equal to negative 2. All right, next, combining like terms, we get 14x minus 72 is equal to negative 2. Adding 72 both sides. Oh, sorry, adding 72. I was getting ahead of myself. We get 14x is equal to 70. And then lastly, dividing both sides by 14. We get x is equal to 5. X is equal to 5. All right, I said lastly, but what I meant was lastly solving for this, right? We still have more to go. Once we solve for a variable, we have to remember that we need to solve for the other variable as well. So we solved for x, we also need to solve for y. Once again, it's up to you which equation you want to use. I really feel like this would be the easiest equation to use. So let's go ahead and try to solve this. Let's always just rewrite this out. 4x plus y is equal to 24. Now remember, we know that x is equal to 5. X is equal to 5. So let's go ahead and replace that x with 5. We're going to have 4 multiplied by 5 plus y is equal to 24. Once again, that 5 came from what we already solved for x, right? We already know what x is. So that gives us 20 plus y is equal to 24. Without using our fancy math, this is just 20 plus what number is equal to 24? We should know that that number is just 4. So y is equal to 4. Y is equal to 4. Yeah, so we found our two variables, right? We have two variables. X is equal to 5, y is equal to 4. Always, always, always write this in coordinate form. 5, comma, 4. 5, comma, 4. 5, comma, 4. Final answer.